I will start by lighting the candles. Darkness cannot drive out darkness. Only light can do that. Hate cannot drive out hate. Only love can do that. Martin Luther King Jr. We are going to start with a congregational song on page 65 in the songbook. All the songs today will be from the pink book. So number 65, We Shall Not Be Moved. Good morning. Welcome to the first existentialist congregation of Atlanta. We are a spiritual community, philosophically based on existentialist and feminist principles, dedicated to human liberation and protection of the natural world. We make our spiritual home in the Old Stone Church, which was hand-built by the African-American Antioch East Baptist Church over 100 years ago. We acknowledge that racial hostility drove those African-Americans from the area, and we honor them and the powerful history of this place. We also acknowledge that in the 1800s, the Muskogee Creek people were driven from this land, and we support justice for all Indigenous people. My name is Libby Ware. I'll be your facilitator, service leader today, and happy almost Labor Day. Yeah. If there are any community announcements, you can find a card on the table in the back and write down your message and carry it up to me. Is there anyone here who's here for the first time or hasn't been here in a while? If you would like to be recognized, you can stand. I'll call on you. You can stand and let us know how you found out about us. Yes, in the back. And your name and how you found out about us?
Blackberry. Blackberry? Black Bear.
Okay, Black Bear.
Oh. And she told us about the place.
Okay, and your name?
Marcia.
Marcia?
I've been here a few times, but...
Okay, well, welcome back, Marcia. And you?
And I'm Joy. I'm his better half. It's our first time.
Okay. Welcome. Anyone else? Okay. We have a connection card on your bulletin. And if you want to fill it out, you can put your name and your email and anything that you are interested in. Just put it in the collection plate. Okay, is there anyone who has had a birthday or an anniversary or has one coming up? Okay. We're going to have another congregational song. It's number 58, Pastures of Plenty.
treasures of plenty from dry desert ground. From the grand coulee dam where the water runs down. Every state of this union us migrants have been. We come with the dust and we're gone with the wind.
Far and away, the best prize that life has to offer is the chance to work hard at work worth doing. Theodore Roosevelt. This is the time when we usually hear comments from our fellowship minister, Marcia Mishner. She is unable to be here today, but she has a short message. As you enjoy the holiday, remember the meaning of Labor Day is to honor the working people. Keep them in your thoughts and hearts.
Amen.
Okay, tomorrow will be the Labor Day Rally and March. Begins at 3 p.m. at the north end of Woodruff Park, also known as Troy Davis Park. March to Ebenezer Baptist.
I'm sorry, what did they name it for you to work?
Do you know who Troy Davis is?
Yeah, I know Troy Davis.
Yeah, so there are so many activists who were against him being executed that's kind of the name that people call the park. It's not the official name.
That's wonderful.
Yeah. I'm glad you put that down, Mary, because I think people forget about that. Okay, so after the service, we're having a visit and eat. We are going to the Hudson Grill, One Moreland and Little Five Points. See Susan Ralston or Mary Howard for directions. If you two could raise your hands.
Mary, raise your hand.
Oh. Okay, on October 19th at noon, there will be a parade in Little Five Points for Halloween. So if you would like to be part of our contingent, sign up in the back. I think. Okay, on the clipboard, sign your name if you're interested in partaking in the parade. The next art opening, Meaningful Masterpieces, this coming Friday, September 5th, 6 to 8 p.m., and that will be artwork that belongs to members of the congregation who'd like to share them. Nancy White ordered 100 postcards to be sent to swing states to encourage people to vote. The state she chose was Pennsylvania. Georgia was not an option. The cards need to be mailed in October. If you are interested in helping Nancy write any one of 3 scripts and address the cards, please sign on the paper on the table in back or see her after the service. Raise your hand, Nancy.
All right, Nancy.
Yeah.
I need help.
I'll give you help. I've done that before. When cards are ready, she will gather them, put on the stamp, and mail them, so you don't even have to put a stamp on it. She's going to make it easy for you. We are going to take some time for the sharing of personal announcements, deeply felt joys, sorrows, milestones. Please keep your comments brief so that everyone has a chance.
A million
a generous and giving congregation. And now is your chance to give back to First D. If you are a pledging member and you're paying cash, there's an envelope that you can put your name on and you'll be credited for your pledge. And Nick is going to play some special music. Anything you want to introduce, Nick?
Just in honor of Labor Day, not only unions, but also to acknowledge all the working class and struggling peoples. I have something from our state of Georgia, and it's, as people know, it's a cotton mill, textile industries, and traditionally, and this one is coming from the very early 20th century, and a fellow I used to know, his name was Lester Smallwood, and he wrote this tune in the 20s, and then a friend of his, Donna West, learned it, and then his daughter, Donna West's daughter, Hetty West, took up the banjo in the folk revival and brought it back as a revival piece. And so it is called The Hard Times in the Cotton Mill, and Hetty West called it Cotton Mill Girl. So I'll sing more of the original about some of the conditions in the cotton mill. So while we pass around the basket. Well, I worked in a cotton mill all my life. Nothing to show but a borrowed knife. Well, it's a hard time in a cotton mill. It's a hard times everywhere. In 1950, I heard it said, move to the city and begin ahead. But it's a hard times in the cotton mill. It's a hard times everywhere. From Gilbert to Bartow's a long, long way down the Corday. From L to J, it's a hard time in the cotton mill. It's a hard times everywhere. To the country, got dust. Just gone to rush. It's a hard time in the cotton mill, but it's a hard times everywhere. There's a poor little children didn't go to school, they just learned to spin, they learned to spool. It's a hard time in the cotton mill, it's a hard time everywhere.
Thank you, Nick.
It's great.
What one state could not get alone, what one minor against a powerful corporation could not achieve, can be achieved by the union.
Yeah.
At this time, I am pleased to introduce Marti Keller. She is a self-described elder and is still active in working for equity and justice through Unitarian Universalist congregations. She was honored at the recent UUAA General Assembly for 25 years of ministry. She is formerly the affiliated minister of the Unitarian Universalist Women's Federation. Prior to her ministry, she was a director for Planned Parenthood, executive director of 2 advocacy organizations for women and children, and public policy coordinator for the Georgia World Urban Summit. In 2020, she received the UUWF Ministry to Women Award. Please welcome Marti Keller.
I want to thank both Libby and Mick. They were amazingly wonderful to work with. Thank you so much. And also to bring you greetings from the 2 Unitarian Universalist congregations that I'm serving in the reason I'm hardly ever here, Auburn, Alabama, and Columbus, Georgia. Greetings from your siblings.
Can you get the microphone open?
Yeah, greetings from your siblings, Alan and Auburn, and Columbus, Georgia. I know I-85 super well. Labor Day weekend has come to be called the end of summer. How many of you sort of figured that, the end of summer? Even though, as I keep insisting, they are exactly 3 weeks left this year until autumn officially arrives, and I am sticking to that. Here in Atlanta, besides the usual family barbecues and final beach trips of the season, it is marked by 2 huge gatherings downtown. The multi-gen Dragon Con Parade, attracting tens of thousands of sci-fi and fantasy-loving enthusiasts, many elaborately costumed, and this year was my first year. I was amazed. People were so happy. I haven't seen that in a while, have you? They were in a crowd and happy, and they weren't thinking of the person that we are thinking too much about. And the college football game, this year Tennessee versus Syracuse, with tens of thousands of their visiting fans. What a mix. In years past, it would also have been the last weekend before the start of public school, but this year it began the last day of July in our district. For my husband and I, we are still awaiting what is the end of summer and beginning of fall for us. That is the rollout after a longer and longer summer hiatus of our 9 or so favorite television shows. Broadcast and streamed. Oh my gosh, I can hardly wait for some of them to start up again. In the meantime, since they were gone for 2 or 3 or 4 months, we searched for ones we had not seen in the regular season. How many of you kind of do that, sort of, look at that? Or had watched once or twice and initially rejected, and were willing, sometimes out of viewer desperation, to try again. So we are down to our last such choice with 3 weeks or so to go, The Gilded Age. How many of you have watched The Gilded Age? With a half-dozen episodes until there are no more, until the new season arrives months from now, perhaps a year from now, and there's no word out when that's going to happen, but their 4th season. The costumes are to die for. They are amazing. The Gilded Age is an historical drama series set mostly in New York City in the boom years of the 1880s. Numerous social and legal aspects of the age appear as subplots and themes, including the robber barons. You can boo them. A person who has become rich through ruthless and unscrupulous business practices. We don't know any of those now, do we? And the rise of organized labor, which is unfortunately on the downturn. A decade before, in the summer of 1873, all of Wall Street had collapsed, And by January of 1874, 15,000 strong unemployed workers gathered in Tompkins Square, in what is now called the East Village, to protest having no work and no means to pay for rent and food and coal and milk for their children. Some of the robber barons said, we'll throw you a little money. They said, no, we want the dignity of work. We have a right to work. And when they gathered in that square, they were very soon rushed by police on horseback and beaten bloody with clubs. While the show focuses on American nouveau wannabe opulence, with the requisite uniformed butlers and apron chambermaids, visiting dukes from England, and competing opera companies. They go on and on and on about which one is the one that they should support. The opening of the Met, the fireworks christening of the Brooklyn Bridge, working poor and labor strikes crop up. They crop up almost in every episode. Not set so far in the city itself, but in a steel mill in Pittsburgh owned by one of the Gilded Age businessmen, where the workers call for a 10-hour workday. If you can just picture them, they're standing in front of the gate of the steel mill going, and I want you to join me. 10, 10, 10, 10, 10, 10, 10, 10. And they faced down guns, and then were tricked and cheated into returning to work. This call for reduced hours morphed over the next decade into an 888 widespread factory protest movement. What these workers wanted was 8 hours of work, 8 hours of recreation, and 8 hours of sleep. So let's say 8. Sounds reasonable, doesn't it? And that was the problem from the owners, because they weren't actually asking for more money or even safer working conditions. They were asking for 8 hours a day of work. Sounds reasonable? 8 hours of recreation, for God's sake, and 8 hours of sleep. We are free, one female mill worker declared, but not free enough, because we also want the liberty of living. The liberty of living. Like many girls, my first paid job outside of the home, that is beyond my 50 cents a week allowance, was, can you guess? Babysitting. At 12 and 13, I had a fair-sized clientele of families in the suburban subdivisions within 15-minute bike rides of our house. Now, some of my employers were great. They were great. They had babies who actually slept, and toddlers who weren't having tantrums every minute, and refrigerators supplied with ice cream bars and sodas. And they paid me when I finished working 75 cents, even $1 an hour. Others involved babies with constant bowel movements, diaper rashes and colic, 4-year-old bullies and picky eaters, and promises of tomorrow I will get you what I owe you. But it was mostly okay work, and the coins and the bills I collected were put in an envelope in my dresser drawer, and I saved them up for special extra things like my first pink transistor radio. Who had a transistor radio? The one I listened to when the Giants lost the baseball playoff series to the Dodgers, and my heart was broken, and my first purple mini skirt that my mother made me return to the shopping center. and then a Samoyed puppy that cost $75 and took months of earning, much to my parents' horror when I brought her home. Since of course I didn't figure on having to feed, inoculate, or spay her, or the fact that I'd be off at college only halfway through her lifetime. Whatever I earned and whatever I saved and whatever I spent this money on did not in any way have to go for basics, right? Because I was fed and clothed and housed, even taken out for movies and hamburgers with or without my wages. Work enhanced my sense of being responsible and capable. It brought me, at least metaphorically, a feeling of independence. It certainly filled up some otherwise dull and endless summers. It was, in short, good for what we like to call character development. I did not do it for bread. In other words, I did not have to earn that money. I did it for the roses, for enrichment, for my soul. I can't say the same for the first job I landed after graduating with honors in journalism from the University of California in 1970, goddammit. The year of one of our periodic great recessions, and by the way, it's one of the hardest years for college students graduating this year to get a job, when no one, it seemed, was hiring. Armed with my prestigious degree, I went to work for Swenson's Ice Cream Parlor, where I served up single scoop and double scoop cones filled with apple pie, pistachio, marble fudge, and mocha ice cream. After the first couple of days of enjoying the free taste we snuck when traffic was slow, I stopped craving ice cream entirely. My arm ached and my hand burned from dipping down to the bottom of cartons. I'm tired of having people bark orders at me and change their minds about what flavor they wanted, or not have the right change and expect me to make it up at the end of my shift. But my then husband and I needed the money I brought in, with no benefits, no holiday pay, certainly no sense of dignity, and really no way to stretch our bloom, being an ice cream server. I didn't last all that long as an ice cream scooper, not even as long as my ex-husband, who had dropped out of college to find himself, lasted on the line in a Del Monte canning plant, or in his next job working swing shift in the collections department of an upper-end furniture store. And this is how he didn't find himself. This period of genteel poverty was relatively short-lived, and truth is, while our parents wanted us to make our own way as a headstrong young couple, they never would have let us go without electricity or ending up in the streets. We had a safety net. We had a safety net in the form of economically stable extended families who would only let us dip down so far before they helped us back up for our sakes, and certainly for the sake of our two small children. And we were embedded in a culture where the assumption was that we would do better sooner or later. You know what I'm talking about? The assumption is we would do better than our parents. My young woman's dream of a better vocation, of bread and roses in my work, in my life, was only a dream deferred that I might have wished, longer than I might have wished, not a dream that died or no dreams at all. Mine was only deferred. At least I had them and they could be actualized. That was not so for my grandfather, Louis Greenberg, and I would wager many of our parents and our grandparents and our great-grandparents. A few years after the turn of the 20th century, my grandfather on my father's side escaped permanent conscription in the Tsar's army as a teenager and made his way to Boston in steerage, where he went to work doing what his father had done. At 16 years old, son of a tailor, he found a job in a ladies' coat-making factory, where the hours were long and the pay was ludicrous and the conditions substandard. The same sort of conditions, I imagine, as existed in the Triangle Shirtwaist Factory in New York in 1911, when more than 100 shirtwaist workers, 146 to be precise, many of them young female immigrant workers, either died in the fire that broke out on the 8th floor of the factory or had to jump to their deaths. Many of these workers were unable to escape. You know why? Because the doors had been locked to prevent them from stealing or taking unauthorized breaks. My grandfather joined the International Ladies Garment Makers Union. In fact, he was a founding organizer in Boston. So let's hear it from my grandfather. By the way, I wasn't going to say this here, but I might as well say, so skipped a couple generations. Our son Ben is a founder of the union at the New York Film Academy, which belongs to the Automakers Union. He is a union founder. now. I asked him, are you going to be a union steward? He said, hell no. I don't expect that my grandfather expected intrinsic rewards from his hours of sewing and later supervising seamstresses. He wanted, what do you think he wanted? Fair pay and safety. He wanted bread, in other words, and had no expectation of roses. I know from reading some of his scribblings translated recently from Yiddish to English that he had a gift for storytelling, but whether he ever dreamed of a vocation in writing, whether he dreamed of all of possibilities within his work life beyond manufacturing ladies' coats and providing for his family, no one seemed to know. So that was my grandfather's work story. He ended up opening up a coat factory, and some of his female workers picketed him. Oh, you can laugh. Anyway, I never learned my grandmother's family story, or rather her work story, outside keeping a kosher kitchen. Because what was reported to the Census Bureau was that she was a housewife, not contributing to the household economy. Like most, nearly all the other women in her Boston tenement, where she raised her 3 children in a cramped third-floor walk-up. A walk on the Brooklyn Bridge one July 4th weekend a few years ago ended on the Lower East Side of Manhattan in the Tenement Museum on Orchard Street and its preserved apartment buildings, which showed me just how cramped and dark these rental quarters were, and the guided tour how off-base the picture of what women's lives were in 1902. Particularly the U.S. Census reports that documented them. The museum tour guide led us up narrow staircases with their faded wallpaper and through a warren of rooms where one of the tenants, Jewish immigrant Jennifer or Jenny Levine, kept house, raised her children, and worked alongside her husband to run a garment business, employing other immigrant women hunched over sewing machines day in and day out. There were even sewing machines in the kitchen, all over that house. More than half of the women took in paid boarders, housing and feeding them, while others became in-house seamstresses and housekeepers and child minders. Other women in the building did the same, only instead of stitching clothes for far wealthier women, they worked in the many kosher butcher shops in their neighborhood. And it was they that formed the Ladies Anti-Beef Trust Association in 1902. And you know what they were protesting? The soaring cost of kosher meat due to supplier inflation. And ain't that going to happen soon here? Demanding that these shops be shut down until the prices were lower, throwing bricks through the storefront windows of those who would not go along with them. One of the protesters told the press that she must help our husbands who work so hard, and then added, "We women will overturn the world." Assumptions by the suppliers that they were very ignorant and non-English speaking or understanding were emphatically false, and these thousands of women were successful in lowering the wholesale price of the meat that was so essential to their religious practices. The kosher meat strike of 1902 seeded future protests and larger-scale strikes. So where did the phrase "bread and roses" come from? It was first heard during a strike in Lawrence, Massachusetts during January to March 1912. Earlier that year, the Massachusetts legislature finally passed a law limiting the working hours of children under 18 to 54 hours a week. The huge textile corporations vehemently opposed the law and in an act of retaliation cut the working hours and thus the wage of all employees, adults and children, leading to the total walkout of workers in the Lawrence factories, more than 35,000 of them. The textile mill strike, which united dozens of immigrant communities under the Garment Makers Union, was led by a large extent, we are told again, by the women. Some have said that during the strike there were women who carried a sign that said, "We want bread, but roses too." This was a strike that appealed both for fair wages and dignified conditions, and beyond that, Beyond that, does this sound familiar? Healthcare, educational opportunities, and cultural activities. The women who held up the sign Bread and Roses were saying that they weren't content, as writer Bruce Taylor describes them, with improvements in the bare necessity of life and work. They wanted opportunities to enjoy their lives and families, to find beauty in the world and be treated with dignity and respect. Their demands were met over the years in that New England factory town as Lawrence opened a series of free libraries, art galleries, concert halls, and parks for these women, as for most workers, who are given the time and opportunity to talk freely about what they really want for themselves. Work should be a choice of a chance to have pride and joy and fulfillment, not all of the time, but more of the time than it often is. Not working, in other words, just to live, but in some ways living to work, alive in our work. And how many of you felt that way about your work? I am still working. I am the 4.5% of women of my age that are still working for pay. More than 50 years ago, radio commentator Studs Terkel, remember him, created what has become a micro-industry in published oral histories of men and women and their jobs. In Working, a collection of people talking about what they did all day and how they felt about what they did, he observed that Americans got up and went to work each day as much for daily meaning as daily bread, that they were as likely to describe how little the work fed their spirits as to complain about how little they were paid. Not that a higher minimum wage and, more important, a fair living wage aren't crucial, and believe me, Georgia doesn't have either one of those. It's just plain wrong. It's a violation of the golden rules of every living faith tradition that even after working 2 or 3 jobs, you could still not earn enough money to make ends meet or provide the basic subsistence needs, the bread of life. It is a moral necessity. Would you not agree? Yes. The women who sewed clothing and worked in butcher stores and minded children and kept house for the wealthy might be described as being the essential workers of their time. If you remember, during the COVID pandemic, there were other people that were declared essential workers and had to go out and work when we were safe at home. Most of them were people of color and very low-income people. And then there are the workers and jobs that remain invisible. Writer Eyal Press, in his book, Dirty Work, Essential Jobs and the Hidden Toll of Inequality in America, distinguishes between these low-wage and underappreciated workers and dirty workers. Dirty workers, a term coined by Everett Hughes following a visit to Germany shortly after World War II, which led him to observe that the work of exterminating the Jews, or more obliquely solving the Jewish problem, was a category of dirty work, where certain agents carried out this unethical, immoral work with an unconscious mandate from the society around them. Dirty work, what Eyal Press describes as work that many people see as morally compromised, unseen labor viewed in large part as necessary to society. And what are these jobs? Workers in prison psychiatric wards, workers who carry out drone murders, workers on the killer floors of slaughterhouses. Besides risk to their health and safety, these invisible workers, these dirty workers, he writes, carry the additional moral burden, including stigma, self-reproach, corroded dignity, and shattered self-esteem. Periodically, these workers, like Border Patrol officers, have been called out for their role in the very real suffering and harm they have caused. For example, those who are staffing or staff the Alligator Alcatraz immigrant concentration camp in the Everglades, and others that are surely to follow. To people and animals on the receiving end who knows they are not victims at all. But pinning the blame for dirty work solely on the people asked to carry it out, we are told, is a useful way to obscure the power dynamics and the layers of complicity that perpetuate in their conduct. It can deflect our attention from the structural disadvantages that shape who ends up doing this work, we are reminded. Because the dirty work in America is not randomly distributed. These jobs are taken disproportionately. Who are they? They're high school graduates from depressed rural areas, including many parts of the South. And if you want to look at a really good film about this, how many of you seen Norma Ray? 1979. Most of us remember that Sally Field got up and said, "You like me, when you got the award. But it was a wonderful movie. It was a true story about a labor organizer, a woman in a small North Carolina town who buddied up and coupled up with a Jewish labor organizer to get a union vote in that town. Undocumented immigrants and people of color who lack the skills and credentials and social mobility and power more educated people have access to and access. They do not, or feel they do not have the option to walk away and find more desirable jobs. They are doubly burdened, experiencing economic vulnerability, while at the same time bearing the psychic toll of doing what E.L. Press calls morally treacherous work. The hope is on this Labor Day, in his words, as immutable as it may seem, the dirty work in America is not foreordained. It is the product of specific decisions made by real people that could, in theory, be unmade, policies that were enacted, and laws that were put in place, decisions that were reached about how we do or do not fight our wars, where we confine some of our most vulnerable citizens, and who gets confined, who gets taken off the street. These are policy decisions that these dirty workers do. How we think about work, he says, reveals something about our society, our values, the social order we unconsciously mandate, and what we are willing to have done in our name. Work, the Persian poet Gilran wrote, is love made visible. Sister Joan Chichester, a social activist and Benedictine nun, tells us that the meaning of work is clear. This is what she has to say on Labor Day. Work involves all of us in the exercise of world building, of co-creation, and we must, each of us in each age, work in new ways to achieve it. Are we up for it? With bread and with roses. Thank you.
Our closing congregational song is on page 61 of your songbook. The big book, Solidarity Forever.
For from the ashes of the old, for the union makes us strong. Solidarity forever. Solidarity forever. Solidarity forever. And the union makes us strong. The union makes us strong.
Our closing words are by Vincent van Gogh. I put my heart and my soul into my work, and I have lost my mind in the process.
Okay.